Too bad. How about you?
Oops. I just kicked something onto the floor. Anyway, I'm fine. Yeah.
Bad mood, eh?
Yeah. What you eating today? The same packet you had the other day?
No, nothing really.
Okay. Just chewing your tongue, were you?
Yeah.
I've just made some, or Sue's just made me some really hot ginger tea.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you're still struggling a bit, are you, with that?
No, there's definitely an improvement today.
Okay.
And so, yeah, my head is clear. It's just the nasal passage is a bit in the throat, a little bit scratchy, but my body's feeling a bit better. My head's clear, so yeah. Otherwise, fine.
Did you have to go and get tested or anything, or?
You don't have to do anything when you.
No, of course not.
All by yourself in the middle of nowhere. No, we've got to do our visa medical, and couldn't do our visa medical until finally we got a police clearance from South Africa, and that's finally been completed today and posted today. It took they said it would take 6 weeks, but it's taken about twice that.
Wow.
And they closed down for any particular scare of a virus or something. They stop working. They've got a reason to stop working.
Yeah.
And get paid. Yeah. So anyway, it's on its way and it's clear. I've got a photocopy right here sitting next to me. All right. Copy, so that helps. Yeah. Yeah.
So what have you been up to?
I've been thinking about the consequences of committing suicide.
That's a good question.
Yeah. You grow up with a theory, or you grow up with within the constraints of a belief system, like karma, for example. And so you think of karma and the consequences, and to think, okay, if that were true, my God, you can't commit suicide. But if it's not true, it might be a good break. Okay. And but it's all based on belief systems and other people's belief systems that educate you in spiritual belief systems. And so when you live in a world that is just deceitful, full of lies, full of self-glorification, what do you believe? And so we come back to those original questions about why are we here? Are we here for a purpose? Are we here by chance? And are we governed by any laws in actual reality? Eternal laws, the laws that are going to be forever. Are we not? So that's the question I give you today, sir.
It's a good question. It's a good question. Well, I mean, if you talk about consequences, well, the consequence of what we see is the impact on those left behind.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a terribly happy space for many people. But I suppose the big questions which have often gone through my mind is there's lots of questions. It's like in no particular order. There's questions around do we have the right to end this creation when we weren't the creator? So that's one question.
Yeah, sure. Powerful question.
And we know that lots of people have committed suicide and attempted suicide. But I also am aware that people who have a very high level of awareness or awakeness, clumsy words, but anyway, also have the ability to drop the body consciously. But that's not, I don't think, suicide. Because suicide seems to be doing something which doesn't allow the body to function.
Yeah, or an option. Yeah.
So that sort of raises questions around distinction. And I suspect that the part of the distinction, apart from the physical elements associated with it, is where they go to next. So someone who drops the body consciously, is probably going to quite a high plane, a high realm. Someone who does it, I guess you could argue that suicide is done unconsciously to an extent, because it's the decisions that are made around it. Could be many, but I don't sort of put it in the same category of consciousness as someone who can drop the body.
No, definitely not. No, you can't put it in the same. Yeah.
So for someone who does commit suicide, where do they go? And I'd suggest they don't go to the same planes or realm that those who drop it consciously, who die consciously.
But those are going to resort back to finding an answer within some belief system. Okay. To a large extent. I mean, I can, as I guess you can too, but we've done some spiritual traveling, and we've been to other dimensions, but don't really know where they are or what they are, or how they're related to us and our future as well. We just happen to go there. Okay.
Well, let's talk about the dimensions then to start as part of this discussion, because I'm doing a little bit of reading at the moment about dimensions, and the proposition is that there's 11 known dimensions. So I've only got to the first 4 so far. So
who, just give me the background of the book? Who's writing the book?
I don't know. It's not a book, it's an article. Yeah.
An article, okay.
I don't know.
No, I'm just wondering where he gets his information from. Is he a credible source of information?
Well, I don't know. Let's just talk about where I've got so far, and then we can ask those questions. So
yeah.
So the first, I suppose it's 5. The first 5 dimensions, I suppose, depending on how you put the first dimension in context. So the first dimension is nothing. So it has no length, it has no width, it has no depth.
Yeah, I go along with it. I've read that too. Okay.
So it's nothing. So the 2 dimensions,
or the 1 dimension.
Well, the 1 dimension's a point, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah. It's just a point.
Yeah. Okay. So you've got nothing, then you've got a point, and then you've got 2 dimensions is basically a line between 2 points, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. It does. It just has like an aeroplane flying over, looking down at something. You can just see points down there that indicate houses and roads and so on, but you can't see any dimension to them.
Yeah, it's a bit like looking at the screen. It's just flat, even though the appearance is otherwise, but it's just flat.
Yeah.
So it has length and breadth.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So then 3 dimensions is length, breadth, and depth.
Yeah.
Which is the space that we physically
length, breadth, and height. You can see and measure length, breadth, and height in the 3 dimensions. Third dimension, yeah.
So the 4th dimension, he argues, is time.
Yeah. I would go along with that, yeah.
So I haven't got any further than that.
All right, well, let's speculate what you're going to read. The 5th dimension then is what? If the 4th dimension is time.
It's a band that had very popular songs in the 1960s and 70s.
Yes, you're right. Yeah. But apparently in our skull, our quantum brain operates in 6 dimensions. Okay, that's within our skull. Okay, so definitely one is about time. There's no doubt about that. But time is only relative to. Time's relative to the 3rd dimension, and I suppose all the everything below 4th dimension. The 4th dimension must have something else besides time. But sorry?
Why?
I don't know, because time seems so insignificant and so irrelevant in quantum physics, and so almost have its own sort of. When you think about 1 dimension, 2 dimension, 3 dimension, you're sort of expecting maybe the 4th dimension is going to be the space between all the dimensions, the nothingness or something like that, which is something, it's space, as opposed to time. Yeah. Well, just hurry up and finish reading.
So what's your either your understanding or your speculation of what the 5th dimension is?
Yeah, the 5th dimension to me is the subconscious, or maybe the 4th dimension is the subconscious. Okay, and maybe that's better, or mixed up, but. Yeah, the 5th or the 6th dimension is where I think, release all aspects to anything that is physical. So although we're still in a physical universe all the way to, I don't know, 66 planes or whatever it is, it's still the physical cosmos or dimensions within the physical cosmos. Well, certainly the first 10 are. Then, what are planes and what are dimensions? I think they're one and the same thing. Okay, I believe that. So I think the 5th dimension is something that is the link to all that is. Okay, and that's in the quantum physics. So you're linking to what it may be written about historically, I don't know, like the Akashic records, and where everything is stored, and that could be the link in the 5th dimension. So you can have access to that while you're living in the 3rd dimension through your skull, or your quantum brain, So getting back past memories, using past information, using information that's just always been there, but maybe you haven't been linked to it. And so that's my guess. What's your guess about physical fifth dimension?
Yeah, I'm sort of kind of, words get a bit hard, but I was kind of thinking about whether it's mind.
Yeah, I think it's relative. I think it's got something to do with mind, because you're talking about, not the subconscious is mind, but then the conscious mind as well, and so somewhere between those two, or beyond those two, maybe. Yeah.
And I think that, undertaking certain spiritual practices enables you to go beyond the physical, goes beyond time, and go beyond the mind. So that I would suggest be up to 6 or 7, somewhere in there.
Yeah. So it's still got to do with, what has it got to do with? It's because it affects you. You are working within those dimensions while you're in your 3D body and 3D earth plane. Okay.
Well, even as we've come to the end of the road in terms of our understanding, the dimensions beyond that, within the context of suicide, essentially what we're talking about is the end of the body, isn't it?
Yeah, but it does it have a consequence on something else other than the body, besides people that you leave behind that you mentioned? But does it have a consequence on whatever does go to the next dimension? I think it does. Okay, and I think it comes down to the point that you made now earlier, and that is, you have a responsibility of being here, of being created and being here. Okay. And your question was, do you have the right to end that? Okay. Now that has massive implications in questioning and in the answer to that, because if you had an answer to that, and there's no reason we shouldn't, it would be powerful. Okay, because now we are identifying, agreeing with, and acknowledging a creator. Okay, and then we need a definition for that creator other than created us. Okay, or created me, and so we have a possibility.
So it kind of, in one sense, listening to you just say those few sentences there takes me back a little bit to what we discussed last week, I think it was, about, the observer can't exist without something to observe, So the whole issue of existence for perhaps you and I is not the fact that I exist, or not the fact that you exist, but the fact that we exist. So it's more about the space between you and I is where the happening is. Take you away, and then that collapses. Take me away, then that collapses. So in the context of suicide, essentially what you're doing is taking away, I'll put some provocative words, they're taking away God's ability to exist in terms of that manifestation and that divine view out into the broader creation.
And if I had to say to you, so what?
So you could question God now, eh? Is that essentially where you're heading? Is it? I
don't know. No, I think you and I in our conversations, we know God exists. Okay, there's that. That might be a discussion for Tom, Dick, or Harry, but for us, it's not. We know God exists. We know there are laws. Okay, And so, how do we move forward contemplating suicide? Okay, and how do we move forward with understanding, if we were ever logical when we were thinking about it? Okay, then you think of these mass suicides where these religious cults, they all follow this guy, and he sells them on this idea of heaven, and they all go out into the country and they do all these funny things that they do, and then they do a mass suicide. Okay, everybody gets poisoned or something. Okay, and so you've allowed yourself to believe in a higher power because you're doing it so that you can go somewhere that's a better place. So you get to believe all that, and you now joyously commit suicide in order to make that transition to that other place. Now, is that other place there because you envisaged it, and do you arrive in it, or does God say, you naughty little bugger, okay, now to hell with you, okay, and you now go somewhere else, okay?
Well, I don't even know it's about the going somewhere. I mean, the irony of that scenario of someone, the mass suicides because of some perception that they're going to go somewhere. The irony of that, in my mind, is that the act of committing suicide is a denial of the existence of God.
Mm-hmm.
That's the irony of it.
Okay, that's a good thought. Yeah. Okay, so then we're looking at two different scenarios, because the people who do the mass thing, following somebody, they do believe in God. Okay.
Well, they say they do. Yeah.
They profess to. Okay.
But that belief
and all sorts of things.
But that belief has God somewhere else.
Yeah, that's our belief. Okay, that is true. Okay, and I agree with you. It is true, but I think for the sake of this discussion, they have a God to believe in. Okay, they have a creator to believe in. Okay, just perhaps not the same way that you and I do. So, but then there's the other person who just knows there isn't God, knows there's no reason for any sort of existence like this, and thinks, to hell with it, I'm just going to slit my throat, and then I'm done with it, dust to dust, okay, and I'm gone forever, and I don't have to put up with any more of this nonsense, or whatever it is, okay. So they don't have any responsibility towards anything superior.
And I think they also have an arrogant view that their perception of themselves is who they really are. And that's not true either.
Yeah. Which
comes back to this issue of observer and the observed, that their view is that what you see here at, a meter or 2 meters distance is who they really are. And that's not who they are.
Yeah, we know that, but they, in their depression and distress state, don't know that, okay? Because, even in my class, I've had people say, why does God allow? And they give a whole lot of examples, okay? And, you realize when people say that, the power they give to God is 3-dimensional human power, okay? And you can't argue with them. You can't even discuss it with them, because there is nothing that you're going to say is going to satisfy that comment, okay? Because it can't be satisfied, because God has nothing to do with the drought in Sahara, or the mass killings in Afghanistan. But he is separate from that, or the manifestation of that, but yet he's totally part of it. Okay. So you don't have an answer for the person who is thinking about suicide, because one thing is for sure: whatever he's feeling now will be gone in a few seconds or minutes. Okay, or so he believes. Okay, that he believes. Let's get rid of it and let's die. Okay, I'm saying that he's going to be rudely awakened. Okay, is that nothing's going to stop. It's going to continue. He's going to still be in a body, in a perceived body that is still fighting the same consequences, but now he's going to sort of sit in no man's land until he would have originally died properly.
Yeah, well, I think that's the folly of suicide, is that they think the body is the carrier of their suffering, and it's not.
Not correct. It's not. Okay. And so they believe that, so they get rid of the body in order to stop that suffering. But they've only got rid of the third body. They haven't got rid of the personality. They haven't got rid of the mental mind, the subconscious mind, the emotional body. They haven't got rid of. Okay.
Or the karmic energy, I would suggest. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's becomes actually more intense now. And I would imagine very, very regretful, because the previous one, the body that they thought everything was suffering, it was actually okay, compared to what they're now doing, which is not okay, which is totally mental.
And from what I've read, and I guess to a very limited extent what I've experienced, is that when you find yourself experiencing, a dark depression or whatever, it's not until you yield to it, that is, give over to God, before you make your way back. And so if you think that, okay, I'm not going to give over to it, I'm just going to supposedly end it.
Yeah.
Then, again, in my mind, it's another form of denial. Because you're not actually ending anything, as you've rightly pointed out. In my mind, you'll intensify it significantly.
Yeah.
You'll ramp it up. And I've read and I've seen people who that term, they hit rock bottom. There's nowhere further for them to go. They've hit rock bottom. And it's only for those people, who might be like severe drug addiction or whatever it is, that until they just say, okay, I give up, I give over. I don't give up, I give over.
Yeah.
That's when the path back starts.
Yeah. And when you start just thinking of the word God, perhaps nothing more than that. Okay.
And I think that's the true acknowledgement, isn't it? That's when the denial stops.
Yeah.
And the realization begins, is that it's not my perception of me, because that's not who I am.
Yeah. But it's whom I'm experiencing right now, and it's really shitty. Okay. And it's really down in the dumps, and it's really, not wanting to go on. Okay. That's the reality at that moment. Okay. At the time. You don't now think, all godly like, and say, oh, well, let me think about love. No, I'm thinking about hate. I'm thinking about down in the thinking that there's no road forward. That's how I'm thinking. So
yeah, helplessness, despair, all of that,
yeah.
vinegar and piss, Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So not in the middle of that are you going to suddenly start thinking about God.
No, but there does come a point when there is that complete helplessness and despair that you cannot do anything else.
Mm.
And so that's the intersection in the road. You say either give over, or if I choose to end it, then that isn't going to end anything.
Yeah. Okay. I think we've probably got to the end of that question, maybe. Okay.
But the really interesting thing, though, like as you said, like even in the classes and so on, how can God let this happen? Well, then, the question that has to come to mind is well, where are you at? Like, where are you at? You're holding yourself out to be something more righteous than your perception of God. Oh, I would never agree to this.
Yeah.
What is God doing? I mean, that's quite a satanic statement, isn't it?
Yeah, I had a woman in class this week. Just about to mention her name, but I won't. And she says she was brought up a Catholic, but clearly she doesn't practice that now. And she said, I stopped practicing it because, God allows all these things to happen. And she said, what happens when now I'm going to die? Now, she's also probably my age. And she said, I'm going to die. And then what am I going to look down? I'm going to see my children and everybody else here on this plane suffering. And am I going to be happy that I'm now in heaven? Okay. And I'm seeing these things. And now that's a perspective that I find, I understand where they're at. I really do. But it's not, I mean, those statements are not true. None of those statements are true, okay? But, how to deal with it is very, very difficult. So, I mean, I did deal with it, and I had to deal with it in some sort of way. And I, basically, each, as you move on through one dimension and then you can't see back to the other dimensions, okay? So you'll never be sitting somewhere in the clouds looking at your children, okay? But yeah, that's where a lot of people are at. But maybe the next question to that is to just take away the suicide of it, because say that you were unexpectedly murdered, okay,
or in a car accident or whatever.
Yeah. That absolutely nothing to do with your intention or to do with your actions. Okay, it wasn't you that somebody jumped whatever and hit you in the car, and you were obediently waiting for the robot to turn red. Okay, turn green, and now you die. Okay, in a violent, painful death. Okay. Now, does that differ from perhaps a peaceful suicide of just bleeding to death? Or is that now a different type of departing from the body? One is intentional by your conscious mind, maybe, be it as much deranged as is, and the other one is perhaps more subconscious because it was somehow going to happen, or whatever, karma, who knows, and now you find yourself in the same place, or do you find yourself in the same place as somebody that committed suicide? I have my own thoughts on that, but what are your thoughts?
Well, some of it, I think, is going to depend on, again, on your perception of it. I mean, say, for example, you're over in the plains in Africa and a lion or a tiger came up and grabbed you and ate you.
Yeah.
The person standing beside that person or running in the other direction would say, that was horrible, that was a shocking death. Why would God allow that? From a tiger or lion's perspective, it's just, oh, here's lunch.
Yeah.
So whose perception is right?
I want to know what happens to the person that is eaten by the lion, and the person that is killed in the car accident, or the person that was shot in the head by accident, or even in a war.
Well, my sense of it is that based on where they're at in terms of their level of, spiritual energy, at that point in time, is the sort of plane that they'll end up in.
Yeah, I go along with this totally.
And it may well be that they're a candidate for reincarnation pretty quickly. So.
Yeah.
To come back and finish what they'd started.
Yeah. You see, that's where a belief system becomes so useful, but also so powerful. We both believe in reincarnation, okay, and so that we can sort of tick off all the boxes because we have that belief system, okay. But
I think also from a logic perspective, you look at some of these, sounds a bit derogatory, but you look at some of these happy clappers about, I'm going to heaven and blah, 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 blah. Well, on the basis of their ability to end their own physical life, what are you waiting for? If it's a better place there than here, what are you hanging around here for? Where's the logic in this? It's a strange thing. And then you can say to those people, like even someone who's chronically depressed, well, put your hand over your nose and your mouth so you can't breathe. What's your body's view of this impending suicide? Your body's saying, to hell with you, I want to live.
Yeah.
Let me breathe.
Yeah.
So and again, I think a lot of it comes back to the perception of, who am I really? And people who walk around with the perception that this is who I am because I drive this car and I do this work and I have this appearance and I have this partner or whatever. If that's their definition of who they are, then, that's, in my experience, a very limited definition. Doesn't make it right or wrong. It just, in my view, just is a very limited definition, a very narrow definition of who I really am.
Okay. I guess everybody thinks everybody else's opinion is a limited view.
For sure. And that'd be right. And that'd be right.
Yeah. Yes, there would be. No, I agree. I think people would perhaps say to us, and I'm speculating, how do you know there's a God? Okay. I could never give them any proof of that I believe there's a God or know that there's a God. Okay. I suppose I choose to believe that there's a God, and inwardly I know there's a God, but I could never explain why there's a God or why there's, maybe in the future as I get more handle on quantum physics and understand more about the quantum universe, then, and I think that's going to be in the very near future. I really do. I think then I would be able to explain it, okay? Because I've been looking forward to, for more than a decade now, you know, when I first met Moya, he was talking about how science and religion are coming together very quickly, and eventually they will be one, okay? So I guess Logos in the future, that will be the religion where science and religion are one, okay? And so, you know, that would make sense to me. And I can already see little bits of it. But why do we have to have things always scientifically proven? Okay, is it just the way we're evolving that we only believe in science? I mean, I've just done a class today on herbs, and you know, we have all these beliefs in herbs, but as soon as somebody says this has been scientifically proven to cure, you know, your sore throat, okay, now suddenly it's got credibility. Okay, the fact that there are 5,000 years of personal demonstrations that it cures a sore throat, okay, it's now suddenly taken a new dimension when it, and people now just, as soon as they say it, it's like, you can't argue with that. That's it. This is scientifically proven now, you know. So somehow
it's an interesting question you pose in one sense, because you know, like if you were to say to me, Don, prove to me that God exists, give me the proof. I mean, my inclination is to say to you, well, who's asking?
That's a Don question.
And you'll say, Michael Plumstead's asking. Well, who's Michael Plumstead?
Yeah.
Show me who this Michael is. Where is he? Show me. Oh, I'm right here. But what do you mean right here? Tell me who's asking the question. And when you answer that question, you will answer your question.
The same person who's going to commit suicide.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
They'll just find out a lot quicker and a lot more painfully.
Yeah.
But you can't deny the truth.
Yeah. But the truth has levels of awareness and levels of consciousness.
But ultimately, there's only one truth.
Yeah, and I guess we'll discover that when science points it out to us.
I haven't got time to wait for science. And I've got to satisfy myself anyway. If you're going out to buy a new car, do you read the reviews and make your decision based on those reviews? No, you go out and satisfy yourself.
Such a long time since I bought a motor car. Oh my goodness. Okay. In fact, I had one bought for me the last time I bought a motor car. Can you believe that?
But I think it's those sorts of questions that we should be inviting people to ask of themselves.
Yeah.
Because the question being posed of, you know, how do you know God exists? Well, it's a stupid question.
Because you can't answer it, it's stupid.
No, it can be answered. It's a stupid question because of the premise that it's coming from.
What's the premise that it's coming from?
That you are separate from God.
But if I don't know who God is, I have to be separate.
Well, then that's why you have to ask yourself, take a step back. Well, who's asking the question?
Now, I want you to tell me because I want to be part of God.
Well, I can't tell you. You have to look. Who's asking the question?
Yeah.
And some people will say, oh, that's a smart aleck approach. But I mean, if we're honest with ourselves, and this has got to be part of the equation, if we're really honest with ourselves, we have to really look and see. And that's where this whole idea of, as part of it, for me, my experience, part of this inquiry is to who I really am. Okay, I actually don't have a head. You have a head, I can see it, and I can tell you about it, but you can't see your head either.
Yeah.
You cannot directly see your head, I can look out from here, but I disappear in favor of you when I look at you.
Yeah.
It's not about me at all. It's about me disappearing in favor of you.
Yeah.
And if I was to walk out my front door and say, "Where's Michael?" All I need to do is just look at what's in front of me. Well, there's Michael there, because Michael hasn't disappeared. He's just changed his form. And if I go to the moon, you change your form again. You look like a planet. And if I go to the next galaxy, you change your form again, because you look like another galaxy.
Yeah.
It's still there. And conversely, if I come up really close, then, depending on how close I get, you'll look like cells, and then you'll look like, atoms, and then you'll look like the components of atoms. Still you. It's just a different perspective of you. And so this notion that we are what we think we look like at 2 meters or 1 meter it's a truth in the sense that, yes, that's what we look like at 2 meters or 1 meter. But what do I look like at 2 kilometers? What do I look like at 2 light years? What do I look like at 2 nanometers?
And what do I look like after I've died? Okay. And what aspects of mine are still there that look like me? I still can't see my head. Okay.
No, that's right.
And I'm still aware that I have some link to God, which is the soul. Okay. But I'm not there. Now, what happens when I actually merge with God? What merges with God? Because that must be me.
But you can do that now. You don't have to wait till you die. You can do that investigation, lead that inquiry now.
I agree. No, I agree. I agree.
Absolutely. And it's something that I can't do for you and you can't do for me, because I can only observe what I observe, and everything that I observe, I disappear to.
Yeah, you can't do it for me, but you also can't intellectually do it for yourself.
No, it's an experiential thing. It's not something you just think about.
Experiential feeling thing of coming back to what the conversation started of, in another dimension. So you're moving to another dimension in order to experience what you are looking and merging with God.
And we need to do that with an open curiosity, because, for example, when I woke this morning, perhaps I was having a dream before I consciously woke that I was a butterfly. So there's 2 perspectives you could apply to that. Am I a butterfly thinking that I look like a human being? Or am I a human being who thought he looked like a butterfly?
Yeah.
And where's the truth in that?
Yeah. Quite profound. I mean, that is really, that analogy is great. I really do. And I think it's really, for somebody who's perhaps looking for an answer, there you've given them a path. You've given them a solution with that analogy. And as long as they keep aware, the beginning of this particular conversation, an hour ago, or whatever it was, is that there are different dimensions, and you are observing whatever you are observing in a particular state of mind or in a particular dimension, and you need to learn to move into other dimensions. in order to get to the point of merging with God. Okay.
And I think the other prerequisite in my mind too, you know, whether it's about the suicide conversation or even if it's just about, you know, does God really exist and all that sort of stuff, is the prerequisite to all of that is I actually don't know. And that's the first part of being honest with yourself, is I actually don't know. And it goes to this like notion that you talked about of beliefs and theories and all of that stuff, is I actually don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
And if I have this burning desire to know, then I need to approach it from that position that I actually don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
And the act of knowing is not, oh, well, so what does Michael think, or what does the guru think, or what does Moya think, or what does someone else think?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's actually, I need to experience this for myself.
Yeah, yeah. Because as soon as you say, what do people think, you again intellectualizing it. Okay? It's not, you cannot experience it by trying to intellectualize it.
And that's why I, in one sense, this is probably just my weirdness, but that's one of the reasons I quite like some of the Zen exercise, like the cones and stuff like that, you know, is that, you know, what's the sound of one hand clapping, you know?
Yeah. Okay.
Until you say, well, I actually don't know, then it's hard for you to then conduct an inquiry as to what it actually is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Until you say, I don't know. Yeah. And then that leads to an inquiry.
Yeah. And it's not Googling something. It's none of those things. It's something that you have to turn inward to and investigate for yourself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because the answer lies within.
Yeah. I'm just going to, you just triggered something in my mind by saying within. Can I maybe just digress? Okay.
I think we've done that one.
I think we have. But anyway, I mean, it's probably time to go anyway. But do you think that, let's, how can I word this? Okay, we're in a galaxy, we're in a universe that's three-dimensional, and as far as we can see, forever and ever and ever, it's three-dimensional because we can see the stars and we can travel there in our spaceships and things, and so it's all three-dimensional. Now, do you think the other dimensions are within this dimension, and each one's getting further and further in, or is it the dimensions going out, out, out? Okay, more and more dimensions out there. Okay, I must tell you, I think that they're all within, in. I think every single dimension goes infinitely within where we are now in a third dimensional. But I'm not sure why I believe that. Okay, it's sort of a maybe it comes from some teachings I've read.
It's hard to know. I mean, because you know, the other day we sort of speculated, you know, that you know the boundary markers in this physical world is nothing and nothing.
Yeah.
And in terms of, you know, the inward inquiry, who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? Because in the physical sense, nothing and nothing. In an inward sense, is there such a thing as nothing?
Yeah.
Or is nothing all there is? You know, they're the paradoxical questions that need to be explored. You know.
Yeah. No, I agree. I was just interested if you had an opinion, because I was thinking this week that here we got a cell, okay, and I was busy. Actually, it was a herb research, and you've got a cell, and in the cell you've got batteries, mitochondria, and there can be hundreds of them in one cell. Okay, so
Yeah.
you start getting this feeling of this absolute smallness. Okay, then you think, well, is a cell actually a universe? So if you were so small that you could be living in that universe and flying spaceships within that cell to get to the end of some universe, it just was really just a thought at the time. And you just mentioned go within, and that's what sparked it off for me to think that maybe we do just keep on going within, and we are the outer crust. We are the skin of all the
I've just put on the chat there for you to ponder when we finish our call, a diagram of a cell.
Okay. Yeah, okay, I see it. Earth, a global map of wind weather. No, that's the one I gave you. Where have you put it? I'm on chat now. Okay.
Maybe I need to. There you go. Is that better?
There we are. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The most detailed representation of a human cell today, obtained from radiography, nuclear magnetic resonance, and okay, that looks so interesting. Okay, thanks for sharing that.
It's come from science, so it must be true.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. I like that. Yeah. Okay, that's super. I'm going to, in fact, maybe will it still be there? Yeah, it'll be there after we close. Okay. Anyway, let's leave it there. It was just a
wonderful discussion. Wonderful discussion.
Yeah, definitely. What about betters in 2021? Anyway. Sorry? What about betters of 2021?
Oh, absolutely, yes. No, it was about time you asked a decent question. Yeah.
Anyway, what is today? Today's Wednesday. Yeah.
Wednesday. So Sunday's the next one, if you're around.
We'll chat on Sunday. Okay.
Sounds good. Look forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. Take care.
You too. Bye.